Hi, everybody. Thanks for logging in to today's Grown Brilliance webinar on tips for finding the right diamond and ring. We'll get started in just a couple moments. So again, thanks for coming, and we'll get started in just a minute. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today at Grown Brilliance for Perfectly Picked Tips for Finding the Right Diamond and Ring. Really glad you could join us today for the second webinar in our series. Really trying to give you just very useful information when you're shopping for diamonds or diamond rings, wherever you happen to be shopping and whatever kind of diamond you're looking for, but just universal advice. And in order to help us do that, we have found the ideal partner, the global head of education for the International Gemological Institute, one of the largest diamond grading organizations in the world, who's going to help walk us through really the most important pieces of information to consider and all the tips and tricks for making sure you get exactly what you're looking for. John, take it away.
Thank you, Josh. We appreciate the invitation from Grown Brilliance and are delighted to be here. Thanks also to everyone attending and participating. I'd like to begin with some background on IGI. We are the world's largest gemological organization, established in 1975 in Antwerp, the world capital of diamonds. IGI now operates 29 grading laboratories and 18 schools in 10 countries around the world, employing a workforce of over 1,000 dedicated professionals. You may have seen our diamond and jewelry reports in the showcases of nationally recognized brands. Relative to our cooperation with Grown Brilliance, IGI was the first laboratory to accept and grade lab-grown diamonds and the first to include lab-grown diamond education in our schools of gemology. We've been grading lab-grown diamonds since 2005. Today, We grade the majority of lab-grown diamond output, including producers of world record-holding rough crystals and polished diamonds. I'm the Senior Director of Education for the Institute in our schools of gemology and am happy to be here. We've got a nice, concise presentation for you today, perfectly picked. It's intended to help you find the right diamond and setting for your personal wants and needs. And we're going to begin with a quick review of the 4 C's, followed by 3 sections. First, how to prioritize your 4 C's based on the desires of the wearer. Then some information on how the different diamond shapes vary in more ways than just their outline, and an overview from Josh on selecting your setting. We've left time at the end to answer your questions. In fact, based on the previous webinar, we've left even more time at the end. You can submit those questions at any time using the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen. Please feel to ask a question if you have it. The chances are, if you're wondering about something, so are others. So with that behind us, let's get into the presentation. A brief review of the 4 C's in order of their influence on value. The most influential factor is the diamond's weight in carats. This is because large rough diamond crystals are required to produce larger diamonds. But large rough is more rare in nature and requires more time and sophistication to produce with lab-grown diamonds. So the heavier the diamond, the more rare and valuable it is. The next most influential factor is color. In the normal range, the most icy, colorless grade is D. Diamonds in that top range, which are completely colorless, are more rare than diamonds that have some tint, therefore more valuable. In the same manner, diamonds which are free of clarity characteristics, which can be surface blemishes or inclusions within the stone, are more rare than diamonds which contain such characteristics. So the closer to flawless or internally flawless the diamond is, the more valuable it is. And finally, the cut of a diamond assesses its human craftsmanship, analyzing what man did to shape the rough crystal and promote positive beauty components. The better the cut quality, the more valuable the diamond. Now, if you aren't familiar with the grading scales for each of the 4 C's, please make a note to visit the Learn with Videos section at igi.org. You can also visit the Diamond Education section on the Grown Brilliance website under the Loose Diamonds tab. So now let's talk about 4 C's prioritization, beginning with the most common engagement shopping mindset. As we've said, diamonds are valued according to all 4 C's. Jewelry professionals know and teach the 4 C's. Engagement ring shoppers learn all the 4 C's. But let's get real for a moment. We'll use the classic example of a young lady who's just become engaged. And when that girl runs into the room where her mother and sisters and friends are and sticks out her hand and says, "Look, I'm engaged," what are the first 2 things that you think strike people about the diamond? It's generally not all 4 C's. It's size and sparkle. The first thing is size. Now, if that's a 3-carat whopper on her finger, it will get attention. Now, if it's really tiny, that will also get attention depending on the crowd. But whether small or large, size is first, and that's why carat weight has the most influence on value. The second thing is they'll notice if it sparkles like mad. They'll also notice if it's dead and lifeless. So, getting real, what most people notice first about a diamond is 2 S's, size and sparkle. The other 2 C's, color and clarity, absolutely play a role, but they're quite granular, meaning the top 7 color grades are difficult to differentiate without close analysis side by side, or sometimes in a grading lab if you've got the highest few colors. And the top 7 clarity grades look identical to the naked eye. So this is great news for consumers with this mindset. Those who have a budget and they want to find the biggest diamond with the best sparkle for that budget. If I'm describing you, then you can prioritize those 2 S's, size and sparkle, and select a comfortable color and clarity combination that helps you achieve that goal. Let's have a candid discussion about color and clarity. When I teach this topic in person, I generally ask the audience, what's more important, color or clarity? And hands go up and opinions are given, but honestly, it's a trick question. It's very personal, and it's up to each person to decide what their color, clarity, and carat weight and cut preferences are. There are some circumstances where you may want to prioritize those Cs. For example, there are cultures that really value high clarity in diamonds traditionally. If you have that belief set, then high clarity is as important in the mind as it is to the eye. Similarly, there's color sensitivity. Like any other sensory palette, people see color differently. There are some people who have truly spooky color sensitivity. They can tell very nuanced color tone, one to the next in a way that most people can't. If you have that color sensitivity or the wearer has that color sensitivity, then color may be a priority. Engagement shoppers may already know their partner well enough to know if one of these should be prioritized, but we did want to mention it here. Now, for those who want to maximize size and sparkle, we thought it would be helpful to share the average color and clarity range diamond shoppers tend to choose because they find that close enough to the top of the scale without visual compromise. The average color in natural diamond selection has tended to be G, H, and I for many decades. The average color in lab grown is actually a little higher, F, G, and H. Now, of course, this tracks with budget. Budget can go farther with lab grown diamonds because they're more affordable. In terms of clarity, the average diamond clarity has largely been the VS and SI ranges, more specifically VS2 and SI1. The reason for this is because VS2 and SI1 can often be eye clean, in most cases with VS2 and in many cases with SI1. When I say eye clean, what I mean is looking at a diamond at approximately 12 inches in normal lighting with normal 20/20 vision, you're not going to see any clarity characteristics. They'll be too microscopic. So that eye clean in natural diamonds has always been VS2 and SI1. Here again, with lab-grown diamonds, the affordability allows people to step up to VS1 and VS2. So for those who want to maximize size and sparkle, cut and carat weight, we thought it would be helpful to share these average color and clarity ranges. The way that you can balance these various combinations can give you an idea of the size and sparkle you can afford without visual compromise. In some cases, the budget may require a high-low or a low-high combination. Now, this happens when you know someone highly prizes one aspect over the others. So you want to maximize that size or that sparkle, but you also want to maximize another C. So we thought it would be fun to talk about the strengths of a combination like D, which is the highest color, and then I1, which may have eye visible inclusions. The fun fact for me here is that clarities of SI and lower, which have eye visible inclusions, are usually great for people aged 40 plus because presbyopia has taken place. Presbyopia is the hardening of the cornea, so the point where once you reach that age, which I have, you can no longer read the print on a dime. We like to say that as age goes up, your range of acceptable clarity widens and the diamond world is your oyster. So that's a fun fact for low clarities. In terms of a diamond that is outside the near colorless range and has some tint in it, like K or L or M, the fun fact there is because that yellow tint is there, there is some spectral absorption, which makes the blue and violet flashes in scintillation peek out. So those things can be good justifications for going to a lower clarity or a lower color. You might want to know the strengths of those things. Now, let's have a candid discussion about cut quality. The reason that we talk about size and sparkle being important is because carat weight is self-evident. Sparkle, meaning the result of the cut quality, actually improves every other C. The first thing it does is when you take the diamond out of bright store lights or out of a bright mall and you take it into a normal situation or a social situation, a well-cut diamond will stay bright edge to edge, so it will maintain its carat weight appearance. Diamonds that aren't as well cut don't necessarily return all the light that's coming edge to edge, so they can appear smaller in lower lighting conditions. In terms of color, remember that diamond color is graded with the stone upside down looking through the pavilion. And that's done for two reasons. One is to eliminate the effect of fluorescence, which is not a concern in lab-grown diamonds. But the other one is because cut quality can impact how that light transmission works and whether or not, if the stone is cut a certain way, the body color is exaggerated so that a diamond that looks like an H from the side, when you turn it up, it looks like a J because the light is leaking out or windowing through the stone, illuminating the body color. Conversely, if a diamond is really well cut, it can mitigate the body color by transmitting light more efficiently and getting in and out without illuminating the body color present. So you might have a J-colored stone that looks a color grade or two lighter based on the cut quality when you look at it face up. And finally, clarity. Clarity is limited to certain lighting conditions, but with diamonds that may have small eye visible inclusions in normal lighting or in grading lighting, good cut quality and lighting that's conducive to sparkle will provide a vivid dispersion, vivid contrast, and it can actually mask eye visible inclusions. So this is just a 411 on how cut quality is very desirable, good cut quality, because it really does improve the other C's. Now, the great news for diamond shoppers is that all of this 4C's advice works the same way for all diamonds, whether natural or lab grown. The main difference will be in terms of budget. So in these slides, I mentioned colors and clarities like K, L, and M, which are tinted, and I1, which may have eye visible inclusions. Now, these are lower than the average diamond shopper tends to choose. Going a bit more tinted in color and having visible inclusions in clarity is not a problem for many people. However, if it's a matter of budget, you can stay higher across all 4C's by applying the budget to lab-grown diamonds. Before we get into this next section, a reminder that we have left time to answer your questions. Now, those questions can be on any topic on diamond buying, gemology, et cetera, not just what we're presenting here. Do submit those questions using the Q&A tool. And again, don't be shy. If you're wondering it, probably somebody else is too. So let's touch briefly on why all shapes are not created equal. First of all, the same carat weight is not necessarily the same size. That actually has to do for the same shape. A round brilliant, depending on how it's cut, could spread 6.3 millimeters wide at 1 carat. It could spread 6.5 millimeters wide at 1 carat, and so on. Cut grades in rounds will generally keep your size appropriate for weight. But when we get to other shapes, shapes with depth look somewhat smaller, whereas shapes that are a little bit shallower or spreadier may look somewhat bigger for the same carat weight. We thought we'd highlight those shapes that actually maximize carat weight nicely: the oval, pear, marquise, emerald, and trillion or trilliant. It's because these stones are a little bit more spready, meaning that they have more horizontal than they do vertical. With that said, these are not necessarily the shapes with the most vivid sparkle and contrast. Those tend to be symmetrical shapes, round and square. Dominating the most vivid sparkle and contrast is the round brilliant. There's a reason that the vast majority of the world's diamonds are cut into rounds. It's because it's just the most efficient at transmitting light. A square shape, princess, also cushion, and then the radiant, whether it's a square radiant or not quite square, these are all cuts which are faceted to promote contrasted sparkle. So let's talk about that faceting, by the way. We're going to wrap up the section by expanding on how faceting arrangements create different aesthetics for different shapes. And we just mentioned the brilliant style of faceting used for round brilliance. It's kite shape faceting, triangles. That's what promotes that vivid sparkle and contrast. You're going to have your princess cut, many cushion cuts, and radiant, which also look like this. Step cuts are a completely different aesthetic. A step cut, like an emerald or square emerald, the aesthetic that's pleasing there is long, fluid, flowing dispersion or fire across the facets. And then when they're very symmetrically cut, you get a nice hall of mirrors effect looking into the stone. So it's an elegant and fluid aesthetic rather than the vivid aesthetic of a brilliant or mixed cut. Then on the whole, come back and talk about outline. Some people want to have a heart-shaped diamond. Some people like the idea of a marquee because it makes a finger look long and skinny. Some people like the idea of a pair. So it's good to know if the wearer is looking for the most vivid sparkle and contrast, which may be something like a round brilliant, is looking for that subtle hall of mirrors effect, which can be a square emerald, or if they just like the pear shape, if they just like the heart shape, whatever it happens to be. Each of these shapes has its own appeal and each can stand on its own merits. It's just important to know that they're somewhat different. If there is no preference, then honestly, again, there's a reason that the modern round brilliant is the most popular. So for our final section, I am pleased to turn the presentation over to the people who engage with end consumers like you on a daily basis. So I'm delighted to welcome Director of Marketing and E-commerce for Grown Brilliance, Josh Sherman. You're still muted, my man.
One of these days, I'll get this right. Thank you. That was fantastic. What great information. I hope everyone really got some tips for what they're looking for. We're going to this last little section. We'll jump right into questions. But again, John, thank you so much. If you've already got questions based on some of the things John said, drop them right into the Q&A and we will we'll get to them in just a few minutes. This next section is relatively short, but basically want to talk about the impact of the setting, right, on a diamond, right, and how that is going to affect the way it sparkles, the way it looks, how big it looks, and then a little bit about the best ways that you can now apply this knowledge on the Grown Brilliance website to get exactly the piece of diamond jewelry, the diamond ring or jewelry that you're looking for, to just give you as much joy and satisfaction as can be. So let's look at how the choice of the setting affects the look and the impact of the diamond, right? So we can start with how the color of the metal, the color of the gold or the platinum, affects the sparkle or the appearance of the diamond, right? So the color of the gold or platinum could enhance a diamond's natural beauty, have no impact on the way a diamond looks. It could make lower qualities more or less obvious, or any of the above, right? And the answer, of course, is D, any of the above. And let's look a little bit at what some of those considerations are. And depending on the preference of the ultimate wearer of the jewelry, it will give you some more ideas of where the give and take might be to get exactly the right piece of jewelry for that person, right? So with our white metals, gold and platinum, white, gold, and platinum, the best match is the colorless diamond, right? The DEF grades of diamonds are going to get the sort of maximum sparkle and the maximum amount of brilliance with that white metal background. The near color of the spectrum, the G, H, I, and J, will definitely look good, right? They will reflect very, very well. And then when you start to get into some of the lower colors beyond the sort of near colorless range, with something like a K, if it's very, very well cut, that can basically not show, as John was just saying, not show as much of that color with the white background, right? On the other hand, if you know that the person who's wearing the ring or wearing the jewelry is looking for yellow gold, you actually can do better in a lot of cases by going with a near colorless diamond that's going to really be enhanced by the warmth of that yellow color, right? Where the pure brightness of the colorless diamond won't necessarily capture that same amount of warmth, right? And even a little further down the scale will still be warmed up by that yellow gold. The purely colorless diamonds, on the other hand, they're not necessarily going to take advantage of the attractiveness of the yellow gold. They will look beautiful together, but it won't be quite that magic, right? Rose gold is very, very flexible, right? It really works with any color. It looks good on a lot of people. So it can be a really generous metal, I think, for a lot of wearers. But it can work really well with near colorless diamonds, especially those that might have a little bit of a brown undertone, again, to bring out some of that warmth, right? So area, if you know you're looking for rose gold, you may have some opportunities to not push as far up the color scale and still have something that looks absolutely spectacular. Of course, the yellow and rose gold do bring out a lot of the power and brilliance of the fancy colors, the fancy yellows and the fancy pinks. So the color of the metal definitely gives you some abilities to move one way or another, especially on the color scale. I think the next real impact of the setting is going to be how does the setting really supercharge that center diamond on a engagement ring or a similar ring with a center stone like this. And there's a lot of ways that the design or the features of the setting can enhance the perception, the experience of that center stone, right? So if you're building your ring around a very, very high quality diamond, right? A traditional solitaire really puts 100% of the attention on that center stone, right? If you really want people to see that super bright, large center, focus on that solitaire can really bring that out. On the other hand, if you're working with a smaller stone, a halo setting does definitely make that diamond appear larger, right? So if you look at the picture, the two princess stones in the center, the solitaire with the trapezoids on the side, or the halo on the right, they're more or less the same size, but obviously from a perceived size, the halo is considerably bigger, right? And a halo in terms of an investment is a lot generally less expensive than a stone that would be much larger to cover that same area. Additionally, like a petite style shank, a thinner shank, the ring part of the ring, is going to make that center stone appear larger by contrast, right? So if you take a look at the ring on the left versus the ring in the center, there is a little bit of a difference because that center ring has such a slender shank to it that really brings out that center stone. And finally, if the cut of the diamond itself is perhaps not as sparkly, the proportions are not as sparkly as you might want them to be, then consider a setting that has accent diamonds, right? So diamonds in the gallery, which is the space underneath the stone, or a hidden halo underneath the stone, will add sparkle and add a little bit of glitter to the stone, especially when it moves or when it's seen from the side, that you might not get from the center diamond itself, right? Just sort of ways that the setting can improve the way that people see that diamond when it's being worn. And then last, I just want to walk through on Grown Brilliance the ways that you can take advantage of all this information that John has shared and really work to get exactly the piece that you're looking for. So the first thing is a relatively new feature on the website, and something we are very, very proud of, which we call truly custom, right? So the tagline is "You dream and we create," and that's pretty much exactly what happens. It is, I think, one of the easiest and most transparent ways to get truly custom jewelry in a reasonable time, right? In barely more than the time it takes for a standard sort of made to order ring. So with truly custom, you can find that on the engagement section of our website. If you go to the menu, you can choose truly custom area, where you can upload your inspiration. It can be other pictures of other rings, or even a sketch on a napkin, whatever it might be. And within just a couple of days, you'll get back a CAD design drawing and a rendering to see what the ring will look like. If it has if it has accomplished everything that you were hoping for, and it looks exactly the way you want it, then in just about 10 days later, it will be in your hands. Otherwise, you can work with one of our diamond specialists on some revisions to that design, which only take a little bit longer, right? So it's as best, it really is the most, the fastest for sure, and the most transparent pricing in custom jewelry. And there are other people that offer custom jewelry, but it sometimes takes months, and it's really hard to understand where the pricing came from. With Grown Brilliance, it's very, very clear, and it's comparable to the other sections of our website. Like the design is included in the cost of the ring, which we think is a piece that really makes custom jewelry accessible to a lot more people. The next section on the site is the design your own section, right? And I think as we looked in the last webinar, the features on Grown Brilliance really allow someone to have very fine control over the kinds of diamonds that they want to look at, whether, with the ability to adjust along any of the 4 C's, as well as some other characteristics of the diamond. So currently, I just looked today on the feed, there are about 60,000 diamonds available, of which you can choose among any of the shapes, virtually any carat size, and all the other quality characteristics until you find exactly the right stone for you, the right diamond for you at the price that makes sense for you. And then put that together with some settings where you have all the various elements, whether it's the prong shape or the shank shape or the accent diamonds or any of the other decorative elements that you could have across a number of different looks, whether it's classic, contemporary, or more of a luxury setting. And then finally, we have our preset ring section, which really gives you access to a huge variety of classic, contemporary, and popular styles, again, with very clear pricing. So we've got about 330 styles on the website, all in 4 metals and in various carat sizes. Obviously not every ring is available in every size, but we start at about a ½ carat and go up as high as 12 carats on the site, including all the side stones. So everything in the preset ring section is going to be in that FG color, and the eye clean at SI1 plus. And there are rings there in 12 different diamond shapes, your traditional rounds, your princess, and so on down the line. So really, however you choose to look for diamond rings, we can help guide you with our team, or you can go completely your own way with Truly Custom. And I think that is that's the last slide for me. So now if you have questions, you can drop them straight into the Q&A, and we can start to grill John and make sure that he's got all the answers for us. So John, thank you again for all this great information. Definitely want to see what we've got from our guests. And let's jump to the very first question. So first of all, a simple one. I think you touched on some of these points, but if you had to choose between a larger carat weight or a better cut, where would you put where would you put your emphasis as a diamond expert? I know a lot of people obviously would jump to carat weight first, but in terms of how you see it.
Well, this question, again, it's personal. And so I would say, if we're just eliminating color and clarity, do you want the biggest flash for the cash, or do you want a diamond that walks into the room before she does because it's mad with sparkle? I think it's a matter of, basically where you live. One of the things about sparkle is that lighting needs to be conducive to produce sparkle. Now, we live in a world where the lighting has changed, like not just over the last 100 or so years, but even as we've gone to try and help the environment, our lighting has changed a bit. And it's become a little bit more conducive in more places to producing sparkle and contrast in diamonds. So for a round brilliant, personally, I would balance with the larger carat weight, but I do know people who say, look, I live in Los Angeles. All of her friends have XYZ carat weight. And so they may necessarily choose carat weight just because they want her to feel like, the peer group is accepting of her. That's completely personal. Other people could not care less about the peer group. But I will say for me, cut, especially as a diamond nerd, cut is very important for me. So for my personal answer would be cut.
Okay. On a tangent from that, this is a question that we get a lot. What is the effect of the number of facets on the brilliance or brightness of the diamond? Are more facets better, or is it just how well those facets are put together?
That's a great question. And I will tell you that more facets is not better or worse. I'm going to compare this to a disco ball. If you imagine going into, I hope everybody in the audience, I hope we understand disco balls. At some point, that's going to become passé, and young people are going to look at me and go, what's disco? But a disco ball is a round ball that has a lot of mirrors on it that in whether it's a high school gymnasium or a fancy ballroom, they'll hit it with lights and it puts sparkles all over the wall of a room. Well, there's kind of a standard for disco balls. And if you have the mirrors on a normal disco ball, you're used to that aesthetic and that sparkle. The instant that you start putting more mirrors there, they're taking up the same amount of surface area, but they just became smaller. And so the strength and intensity of the sparkle is distributed differently. On the opposite side, if you put less mirrors there, then you're going to get longer lasting reflections, but it's not going to be as vivid. So there's a reason, by the way, that the 57 facet modern round brilliant has been the most popular shape for more than 100 years. And that's because that faceting style, whether it's 25 points, quarter carat, up to 3 carats, up to 4 carats, it just seems to have the aesthetic that many people like. So there's a reason for that. Now, if you're talking about 8 carats, 9 carats, 10 carats, you may want to put some more facets on there, because at that point, the surface area each facet takes up is having something to say about it. By the way, it's interesting. Many of those large carat weights are fashioned into emerald, not emeralds, sorry, but step cuts. So emeralds, square emeralds, etc., because the character of it all changes, and you have that fluid Hall of Mirrors effect at larger carat weights. So the answer to the question, are more facets good? They're not better, they're not worse. You can find examples of cuts with more facets out there. Check it out, see what you like. But again, there's a really good reason the 57 facet round brilliant has held the place it has for a long time.
Fantastic. One big question, I think, is if people are interested in the fancy colored diamonds, do all of these same guidelines apply?
No, throw it all out.
Different considerations.
Throw it all out the window when it comes to cut. Okay, I mean, because they're going for a completely different goal for fancy colored diamonds. They're trying to cut with angles. Okay, so let's talk about D to Z. The diamonds that are D to Z, they're trying to cut with angles that'll get the light in and out with the most efficiency, trying to mask the body color, so that you don't see the tint. Fancy colors are completely different. Now you're trying to let light pass through the stone in a way that we call windowing, which will illuminate the body color present, or alternately, we can try to make the light bounce around inside the stone for a longer period of time, which is called color entrapment. So fancy colors in terms of cut, you actually have to look at it. That's the other thing. Fancy colors are graded face up because the cutters are doing different strategies. And so unlike D to Z diamonds, which are graded for color upside down viewed from the side to permit a neutral view, fancy colored diamonds, you're looking at them right at face value. We could do a whole hour on fancy colored diamonds easily. Color, so that's how color works. And it's based on hue, tone, and saturation. Again, you can look this up. There are educational resources out there. Clarity works the same way. Carat weight works the same way, except that the shapes can be a little shallower or a little deeper. So they run the depth percentage, and the side-to-side spread runs differently.
Right. A couple of questions specific to the Round Brilliant, which I think are worth a minute of our time, because that is obviously such a popular shape. Can you get into a little bit of detail on the depth and table, what that means, and sort of how to understand the interplay between the two, right? I mean, the questioner says they've seen ideal cuts with very different depth and table percentages, and just want to have a sense of how to use that information.
Yeah, it's a favorite topic, and I was glad I actually did see that question come in while you were speaking, and so I pulled up. I'm going to share my screen in a minute if people want to grab a screenshot, but let me just give you the elevator about that. There is a set of proportions that was developed over 100 years ago, or calculated rather over 100 years ago, by a mathematician named Marcel Tokowski for the modern Round Brilliant. And what he did was said, okay, where are we going to get the best balance of the positive beauty components, which include brightness, which is white light coming out of the diamond, dispersion, which is dispersed light that we have the opportunity to see as fire in certain lighting conditions, and contrast. And those three elements make up scintillation, make up sparkle. So he came up with these proportions, and most cut grading systems have used those proportions as the center for where they reward the top cut grade. With that said, you can go away from those proportions in two ways. But if you go away from those proportions and you make the crown or the top of the diamond shallower, you have to make the pavilion or the bottom of the diamond deeper in order to maintain that relationship, which lets light get in and out of the diamond efficiently. So what I'm going to do is just share real quick, if anybody wants to grab it. This is a common look. This is not codified. This is just a lot of experts concur about this. This is the range of proportions to look for that are very close to Tokowski's, that a good number of Round Brilliants are cut into. If you stay in this range of proportions, it's a very balanced look at fire. It's a very balanced look at brightness. It's a very balanced look at contrast. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds here, but I will say that you can go outside these proportions, but there's a little bit of yin and yang to it. If you go steeper in the crown angle, then you need to go shallower in the pavilion angle, and the table has a dynamic. We teach hours-long courses about this stuff. So it's a great question. Bottom line is, yes, you can have different tables and depths within ideal, as long as you're following the slope that rewards the proper angles that complement each other.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you for that. And sticking on the Round Brilliant, there's a question about a Round Brilliant in rose gold and what color grading might be the ideal, or what the differences are really going to, what impact they're going to have on the diamond in a rose gold setting specifically.
Okay, so as an institute, we grade jewelry. We don't necessarily make aesthetic recommendations. So this is just based on my observation. I will say this: rose gold is good for practically any color, but when you have a brown tone to the stone, and if you have even a deep yellow, but if there's a brown tone to the stone, there's something about rose gold that really makes the aesthetic come together for me. The other consideration is skin tone. Rose gold against different skin tones looks very different, and you mix that with the skin tone with the color of the diamond, you have a lot of different combinations. So I would say be sure to experiment. But if I'm just going flat answer, I'd say that any color is great for rose gold.
Excellent. Thank you. We did have one question of whether or not we'll be adding new ring settings in the future, like high settings. I will say that our product team and our designers are constantly working on new designs and bringing new things onto the site. Under the engagement section, There is an ability to filter on what's new, and you'll see basically all the new designs. And there is new things coming in quite frequently on Grown Brilliance. So we keep the product team very, very busy. And then I think the piece that comes up whenever we're talking about this, John, is really the question of value, right? So there's a couple of questions about a rule of thumb ratio of a cost differential between mined and lab, and then also the question of whether lab-grown diamonds have stored value, right? Have retained, how do they retain value, I guess, in comparison to mined diamonds, and sort of how does someone make a choice in that regard?
Well, so I think you might have better visibility as to some of that, Josh. We do as at the lab, we're reporting the news, we're giving the grades, et cetera, but we have nothing to do with pricing or selling. So I'd default to you on some of that.
Sure. So I think one of the things that we see is that the cost differential, I think, is changing over time, right? That lab-grown diamond technology improves, and we have seen over the last several years that the cost of lab-grown diamonds has settled a little bit. And I think that generally the way to think of it is, as the diamond gets bigger and as the quality, the other 3 C's reach the higher echelons of the quality scale, the differential gets wider, right? Because I think if I'm understanding everything correctly, in mined diamonds, right, we talked about those averages, and they're sort of in the middle, right? And the rarity of the very large or the very fine is much higher, whereas in lab-grown diamonds, obviously there's some ability to control for some of those factors, right? So as you start to get to bigger sizes and more D colors, VVS, clarities, et cetera, that differential does get quite wide. In terms of value, I think it's hard to say. Lab-grown diamonds are relatively new. I mean, I think that there is a general question about like the investment value of diamonds in general, right? What you pay for it in the store is not what you're likely to sell it for if you need to sell it. So whether or not the differential between a newly purchased mined diamond and a resold mined diamond, and the difference between a newly purchased lab-grown diamond and a resold lab-grown diamond, the difference is much smaller, but the absolute value of the diamond, it's just too soon to say, I think. And then there's a question that I always have myself when buying anniversary bands or eternity bands. Is it typical to match the diamonds and the carat weight in the wedding band, or is it really a personal decision? I think at least what we see on the website is that's really a style decision as much as anything else. So the question is whether you want something that appears to be a matching set, or you want things that are a little bit different from each other. I think one question, though, is whether or not how close the color match really should be if you're going to wear the rings on the same finger. I don't know, John, if you have a thought on that one as well.
No, exactly what you said. I was tracking with you. We had a request in the questions to put the proportions chart back up, so I will go ahead and do that while we answer another question, so people can trap that if they like.
Sure. And then there's a question on newer trends that we're seeing in the diamond engagement ring purchases. I would say that in general, some of the things that seem to be true. The classics are the classics for a reason. People come back to those all the time. They continue to be very, very popular, whether it is some of the halo rings or the classic solitaire. I think personally, I've been noticing that more of like the split shank settings have been popular lately. And I would say that some of the more subtle accents, I think, have been very popular lately, whether it's the hidden halo or the shadow halo effects. And some of those enhancements to the setting, I think, are really galvanizing a lot of people today. And I think the other piece that does seem to be a trend that has some staying power is that the Toi et Moi, the two stone rings, are really capturing, I think, a lot of couples' attention these days. Let's see, I think we have a couple left, and we're just about coming to the end of our time. So one question here for rose and yellow gold solitaires. Do you recommend platinum prongs to blend in for security, or is it not a big deal, right? Or colored prongs, right?
Well, platinum prongs, we know that platinum prongs act like shock absorbers because the material is not as hard as gold or white gold, but it's denser. And so it was, thought for a long time, if I get platinum prongs and then like I slam my hand in a door, or I take a ding, or a knock or something like that, that it's going to probably have a better chance of holding the stone. And Josh, you could speak to this better than I can, but I do believe we've seen a trend of gold taking over where platinum prongs used to be the norm, but we're seeing a lot of white gold prongs, yellow gold prongs now in place of platinum heads, or is that?
No, that's true. I think we're definitely seeing a lot of gold prongs now, and I think also in many cases, potentially gold prongs of a different color than the rest of the ring, right? Certainly with some of the fancy colors using yellow gold for the prongs, or rose gold for the prongs on a pink fancy, or some of those other two-toned options, I think, are becoming more and more accessible to people and popular as people try to really personalize their ring for themselves. Now that there's so many different ways to have something that's really just yours, in the same way that we have those options we talked about on the Grown Brilliance website.
Yeah, I'll just follow up what I said with a public service announcement. You have insurance on your house, you have insurance on your car. The reason to have insurance on your diamond is because of the very thing that we were just talking about. It depends on what's happening. Doesn't matter whether you have platinum prongs, doesn't matter whether you have white gold prongs, doesn't matter whether you have a bezel. The point is something can happen when you're out transitioning. So jewelry specific insurers for me are the way to go. We actually, with the Institute, we partner with some insurers just to try and help people get their insurance, because we believe it's well worth it for the same reason you'd insure your vehicle.
Fantastic. I think that does bring us towards the end of the questions for today. Again, thank everyone for joining us. This has been a great session. Really appreciate all the questions, and look forward to having you all join us again. We should come with more information about upcoming webinars very, very soon. John, once again, thanks very much to you for sharing your expertise with us. Thanks to IGI for the work that you do to really clarify what and give people confidence in what they're purchasing when they're purchasing fine jewelry. But again, we really do appreciate you giving time to Grown Brilliance and to our listeners today.
It's our pleasure, and thank you, Josh and Grown Brilliance, for having us. Thank you, everybody who attended, and thanks for the great questions.